Okay, so I want to start today by trying to get us all into a very specific and I think a very common emotional state. I want you to just picture the last time you felt a moment of, I don't know, pure, uncomplicated goodness.
Hmm.
Maybe it was even this morning. You're sitting there, the coffee is actually good for once.
A rare event.
Right. And the light is coming through the window in that specific way that makes all the little dust motes look like magic. Or maybe you're just walking with a friend and you're laughing at something completely stupid.
Yeah.
For just a few seconds, or maybe if you're lucky, a few minutes, you are totally in a bubble.
It's what psychologists would probably call a state of safety. Your nervous system is finally downregulated. You aren't scanning for threats. You are just being.
Exactly. It feels light. It feels right. And then the intrusion happens. And it's almost violent how fast it happens.
Yeah.
Maybe your phone buzzes on the table. Or you just unlock your screen out of habit and you see a headline. Or maybe your own brain just decides to be a jerk and reminds you of something you saw earlier.
Right, it dredges something up.
Yeah. And you remember that right now, in this exact moment, while you are sipping that perfectly temperature-controlled latte, the world is, well, it's effectively burning.
Mm-hmm.
You think of a war zone where people who look just like you are running for their lives. You think of refugees freezing in a camp somewhere. You think of the homeless encampment you drove past on the way to the cafe.
And the bubble doesn't just pop, it curdles.
That is the perfect word for it. It curdles. The joy instantly turns into something sour, something gross in your gut. It's what our source material for today actually refers to as the modern emotional whiplash.
A very apt term.
And immediately there's this internal voice that just starts screaming.
Ugh.
And it asks, how dare you?
How can you be happy when so many people are suffering?
Is my happiness wrong? Or even is my smile a betrayal? And that right there, that is the heavy, complicated, messy thing we are going to try and unpack today.
It's a profound question. And honestly, it's one of the most urgent questions of modern life, I think.
Mhm.
Our mission for this deep dive is to explore exactly that, the ethics of joy in an unjust world.
Okay.
We're working from a pretty fascinating stack of notes today. Some psychological research on empathy and compassion fatigue, but also a primary text that's actually titled The Ethics of Joy in an Unjust World, which, well, it breaks down this exact moral and psychological struggle.
And before we get into the philosophy of it all, I
Yeah.
just want to validate how visceral this is. This isn't just some abstract, seminar talk. I feel this constantly.
Well, because
I'll be having a great weekend. Maybe I'm at a concert or I'm just watching a movie with my family, and then I'll remember a headline about a famine or a bombing, and suddenly I feel fraudulent.
fraudulent, that's interesting.
Yeah, like I'm an imposter in my own happiness. I feel like by smiling, I'm betraying the people who are suffering. Or I get this feeling that I have to carry the weight of the whole world on my shoulders, and if I dare put it down for 5 minutes to enjoy myself, I'm a bad person.
And that reaction is incredibly common, but I want to push on it a little bit if we can. We often frame that feeling as just, having a conscience, which it is. But the source material frames it as a genuine philosophical tension.
Okay.
We're navigating this very tricky space between what it calls moral solidarity, which is that deep need to stand with those who suffer, and on the other hand, the psychological necessity of living a full human life.
So the central question we're trying to answer today is it morally wrong to be happy when the world is a mess? Or is it possible for genuine joy to coexist with a deep awareness of injustice without that making you a monster?
Precisely. And the roadmap for our discussion today is really about deconstruction. First, we need to diagnose why we feel this guilt. I mean, where does it actually come from?
Right, the root cause.
Then we're going to look at the two most common reactions people have to this tension. What we might call the total misery approach, and on the flip side, the total denial approach.
And spoiler alert, I have a feeling neither of those are going to be the final answer.
They are, let's say, both
Right.
flawed strategies, yes.
Yep.
And then finally, we'll try to map out a middle path, a way to find what the source calls a soft-hearted happiness, one that doesn't ignore the world, but actually engages with it more effectively.
Okay, I'm in. Let's unpack the diagnosis first. Why does happiness feel so suspicious? And I'm using that word suspicious deliberately. It's not just that I'm sad the world is bad, it's that I feel suspicious of my own good mood, like I'm getting away with something I shouldn't be.
That suspicion is the absolute core of the moral worry. The text argues that the fear stems from this subconscious belief, this little piece of code running in the background that says, if I am happy while others suffer, Maybe I'm indifferent.
Right. Maybe I don't care enough.
Yeah. Maybe I am selfish. Maybe I am morally blind. It's a fear that your happiness is actual evidence of a deep character flaw.
It's like we have this equation in our heads. Misery equals awareness. And if I'm miserable, that means I'm paying attention. So if I'm happy...
You must have forgotten. You must have looked away.
Exactly.
And the source gives 3 really specific reasons why this feeling takes such a strong hold. The first one is a big one. The concept of unearned privilege.
Oh, yeah. This is the birth lottery. The big one.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the things that even allow you to have that good moment we talked about at the beginning. The simple cup of coffee, the feeling of safety, having leisure time.
The fact that I have electricity and internet to listen to this right now.
The fact that you're not currently running for your life or trying to figure out where your family's next meal is coming from.
Right.
So many of the joys we experience are built on these foundations that we didn't fully earn in a strict meritocratic sense. We were born into a certain level of safety, a certain country. We had access to education, to healthcare, to stability. These are so often accidents of birth or geography.
Okay, but let me play devil's advocate here for just a second, because I know some listeners might be thinking this. I work hard. I have a stressful job. I pay my bills. I deal with my own problems. Is it really fair to say my happiness is entirely unearned?
And that's a really valid pushback. The text isn't saying you don't work hard or that your struggles aren't real. It's saying that the opportunity to work hard and see a tangible reward for it is, in and of itself, a form of privilege.
Ah, okay.
There are millions of people working harder than you or I will ever have to, doing just back-breaking labor in incredibly dangerous conditions, who will never, ever have that simple moment of safety with a good cup of coffee.
So the disparity isn't in the effort we put in, it's in the system that determines the outcome of that effort.
Correct. And you know this, right? We all know this on some level.
Yeah.
You are sitting there safe and warm and, intellectually and emotionally, that there are other human beings just as worthy as you, just as complex and valuable as you, who are living in constant danger or absolute deprivation.
And that gap, that massive gap between my safety and their danger, that's where the guilt lives. It feels fundamentally unfair to enjoy the fruit of a lottery I just happened to win. It feels like I'm enjoying stolen goods.
Precisely. And that feeling leads us directly into the second reason the source gives.
Yeah.
Moral solidarity.
This is the suffering with idea, isn't it?
Yes. Solidarity, in its deepest sense, means standing with someone. It means you're on their side. And emotionally, we often interpret that to mean feeling what they feel.
Yeah.
If you truly care about someone else's suffering, the logic seems to follow that you should be suffering right there alongside them.
It feels like a betrayal to be light. I always think about the funeral analogy. If my best friend is at a funeral grieving a profound loss, I don't walk into the room cracking jokes and dancing and talking about how great my life is.
Of course not.
No, I match their energy. I sit with them in their grief. I mourn with them. It's just basic respect and empathy.
Right. But here is the massive problem with trying to scale that very human, very appropriate instinct up to a global level.
The world is too big.
The world is vast. At any given second, the world is essentially a funeral somewhere. A crisis is always happening.
So if I apply that same funeral etiquette to the entire globe...
You feel you should always be in mourning. To be light and joyful while others, even complete strangers thousands of miles away, are in crisis, feels like you are abandoning them emotionally. Like you're leaving them alone in the dark while you step out into the sun.
Which makes you feel like a terrible friend to the whole of humanity. It's an impossible standard.
An impossible standard. And the third reason, which is very potent and maybe a bit more insidious, is what psychologists sometimes call psychic numbing, or really the fear of it. The source calls this the fear of becoming numb.
This is the slippery slope argument, right?
Yes, the little voice that says, be careful. We worry that happiness is a sedative. We have this deep fear that if we allow ourselves too much joy, we'll lose our edge, we'll get soft.
That we'll stop paying attention to the news because it's a downer.
Exactly. We'll stop fighting for change.
Yeah.
We'll just become complacent.
It feels like happiness is a form of making peace with the world as it is. And if the world is fundamentally unacceptable, then making peace with it is, well, it's complicity, isn't it?
That is the fear in a nutshell. That happiness is a form of surrender. That by being happy, you are implicitly saying, you know what, this is fine, when it absolutely is not fine.
Okay, so we have this toxic cocktail of guilt over our privilege, this deep desire for moral solidarity, and a profound fear of becoming apathetic. And that leads a lot of people, either consciously or I think more often subconsciously, to adopt what the source calls the puritanical approach.
Let's deconstruct this. This is extreme view number one.
The strict position, the internal no joy policy.
The argument here, stated plainly, is as long as there is injustice in the world, you have no moral right to be happy. Full stop.
It sounds so noble when you say it like that, doesn't it? In a very gritty, self-sacrificing martyr kind of way. It feels like the good person thing to believe.
It creates a very stark, very simple moral rule. Every moment of joy you experience is viewed as morally suspicious. It's seen as a direct sign of disrespect toward those who are suffering.
Oh.
If you are smiling, you are, by definition, in the wrong.
But the source material, and I mean, I think any therapist worth their salt would say this approach fails. And it doesn't just fail a little bit, it fails hard, catastrophically.
It fails on multiple critical levels. First, and most obviously, there is the simple issue of impossibility.
Right. I mean, do the math. If the rule is no happiness until there is zero injustice, then...
And you never get to be happy. Obey. Again, because tragically, there will always be injustice somewhere in the world. Human history suggests that's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, unfortunately.
So if this rule holds, you are never permitted to exhale. You're never permitted to smile at your child's joke, or enjoy a sunset, or laugh at a movie. It renders the fundamental human experience of joy completely impossible.
It's a self-imposed life sentence of misery.
And for what, really?
Eh.
That brings us to the second, and maybe more important, failure. Ineffectiveness.
The source had a phrase here that I literally underlined 3 times in my notes. Guilt does not feed the hungry.
It is such a harsh truth, but a necessary one. We often confuse what psychologists call affective distress, which is just the state of feeling bad with compassionate action. Your internal state of misery does not magically teleport food or medicine or shelter to people who need it. Constant self-punishment does not automatically translate into effective real-world action.
I think we do that all the time. We confuse feeling bad with doing good. Like, if I sit in my room and I feel absolutely wretched about the state of the world for an hour, I feel like I've done something.
You feel like you've paid your dues for the day.
Yes, but I haven't. I've literally done nothing. I'm just sitting in my room feeling wretched.
You've simply added one more miserable person to the total tally of the world's misery. You end up, as the source so bluntly puts it, miserable and useless.
Ouch.
It's what some researchers call performative misery. It's a form of suffering that serves no external function. Its only purpose is to prove to yourself and maybe others that you care.
Miserable and useless. That is a brutal diagnosis.
But it's often true. And that leads directly to the third and final failure point of this approach: burnout and paralysis.
We see this with activists and frontline workers all the time.
All the time. There's a concept in psychology called empathy distress, or compassion fatigue. When you are constantly, relentlessly flooded with the pain of others, without any respite, without any source of renewal, your brain eventually it shorts out.
The system overloads.
Exactly. A life without any allowed joy is fundamentally unsustainable. If you deny yourself all restoration, all pleasure, all light, you cannot possibly sustain the immense energy required for long-term compassion or activism. You will burn out.
And the source points out this backfire effect here that's really interesting. It says that if the burden feels too heavy, if the rule is you must carry the weight of the entire world on your shoulders every single second, people eventually just collapse. They turn away from the world entirely because it's just too overwhelming, too painful to look.
It becomes a trauma response. If looking at the world equals unmitigated, unrelenting pain with no permission for any relief, your brain will eventually force you to look away just to survive. So this ethic of total misery is completely self-defeating. It ends up destroying the very agent of change it's trying to create.
Okay, so the puritanical approach is officially out. It makes you miserable, it doesn't help anyone, and it eventually breaks you and makes you turn away from the problems anyway. So naturally, the pendulum swings to the complete other side. Extreme view number 2.
The hedonistic denial.
This is the la la la, I can't hear you approach. The argument is basically, look, the world is a total mess. I can't fix it. It's too big for me. So I'm just going to focus on me. I'm going to enjoy my life, drink my wine, and just forget the rest.
It is a very, very tempting proposition. I think we can all admit that.
Yeah.
It offers immediate protection from all that pain and guilt we were just talking about.
Yeah.
It feels like a rational act of self-preservation.
It's the path of least resistance, for sure. But, and I'm sensing a very big but coming, I'm guessing you're going to tell me this is also a very bad idea.
It is deeply problematic, both morally and, I would argue, psychologically. The first and most obvious danger is what the source calls indifference as complicity.
Right, the classic, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. If I'm just ignoring the problems, I'm probably propping them up somehow.
Precisely. We live in a deeply interconnected global system. If we refuse to see or care about injustice, we are often, whether we like it or not, indirectly supporting it.
How so?
We might be buying products made with exploitative labor, or voting for policies that harm people in other countries, or benefiting from systems that displace communities, all simply because we refuse to look at the reality of our choices.
It's like if you don't look at the giant leak in the roof, the water is still actively damaging the house. You're just pretending it's not. Your ignorance isn't just bliss, it's negligence.
A perfect analogy.
Aye.
And that leads to the second danger, isolation from reality. Happiness that is built on a foundation of denial is described in the source as being exceptionally shallow or fragile.
Why fragile? You'd think it would be strong because it's protected.
It's fragile because you have to build a fortress to protect it. To maintain that level of denial, you have to curate your life so aggressively. You have to mute certain words on social media. You have to avoid certain conversations at parties. You have to literally look away from certain parts of town.
You're constantly guarding the gates.
Constantly.
Yeah.
So you're not actually free. You're a prison guard of your own happiness.
That's a great way to put it. A happiness that requires a fortress is not true freedom. It's a form of self-imprisonment. You are living in terror of reality breaking in and shattering the illusion.
Exactly. And the third danger the source mentions is perhaps the most profound. It's the loss of humanity. This is the big philosophical one. This is the real kicker. Part of being a full, complete human being is being porous. It is being affected by the reality of other people. Empathy is a core function of our species. It's what allows us to build societies.
So if you successfully manage to shut that off completely,
If your happiness requires a complete and total emotional disconnection from the suffering of your own species, then something absolutely vital is missing. You have achieved a state of pleasantness, perhaps, at the direct cost of your own humanity? The verdict here is that this approach is morally incomplete.
okay, so we're stuck. We're in a real bind here. Option A is total misery, which burns us out, helps no one, and feels terrible. Option B is total denial, which makes us callous, shallow, and morally incomplete. Where in the world is the middle ground? How do we thread this needle?
This is the crucial pivot point in the whole discussion. The source suggests that we've been asking the wrong question all along.
Okay.
The question isn't, is happiness wrong? That's a dead end. The better question, the more useful question is, what kind of happiness are we talking about?
So we need to categorize the joy. Not all happiness is created equal.
Not at all.
Yeah.
We need to learn to distinguish between what the text calls problematic happiness and healthy moral happiness.
Okay, let's break that down. Let's talk about the problematic kind first. The source lists two main types, right?
It does. First, there's happiness that is based on direct exploitation. This is where your joy is directly, causally linked to someone else's suffering, and you either don't know or you simply don't care.
Give me a concrete, everyday example of that.
Okay, a simple one is fast fashion. If you buy a shirt for $5 and you feel that little rush of joy at the incredible bargain, but that shirt is only $5 because the person who made it, likely a woman or child, wasn't paid a living wage and worked in unsafe conditions.
Then my joy is literally extracted from their suffering.
Exactly. That is happiness built on the backs of others. That, the source argues, is morally rotten. The second type of problematic happiness is the one we just discussed. Happiness based on denial. Forcing yourself to look away from uncomfortable truths just to maintain a pleasant mood.
Okay, so those are the bad kinds of happiness, exploitative and ignorant. What does the good happiness look like? The healthy kind.
The source describes it as deeply human. It's joy found in connection, in things that are generative, not extractive.
Like,
Friendship, love, creating art or music, being in nature, learning something new.
stuff that isn't about taking from someone else. My enjoying a beautiful sunset doesn't take that sunset away from you.
Precisely. But here's the most important part of the distinction. It's not just about the activity itself, it's about the attitude you bring to it. The key characteristic of healthy happiness is a fundamental shift from entitlement to gratitude.
Oh, this is a huge mindset shift. Talk about that difference. Because they can look almost identical on the outside. Two people drinking coffee.
They can. The entitled mindset says, I am happy because I deserve this. I've earned this. I deserve this safety, this luxury, this moment of peace more than those other people. That thinking inevitably leads to arrogance and disconnection.
Yeah.
It assumes the world owes you this joy.
Right. And gratitude. What does that sound like?
Gratitude says, I am so lucky to have this moment. It fully recognizes the disparity. It says, I know the world is wounded. I know not everyone gets this. And because I know that, I'm going to treat this moment like the precious, fragile gift that it is, not like some right I'm owed.
So the real litmus test is about the foundation of the joy. You have to ask yourself, is my happiness unjustly built on someone else's pain? Or is it just a moment of grace, a moment of good fortune?
Is my happiness merely disconnected from the immediate suffering of others? Or is it directly caused by the suffering of others? That is the crucial, all-important distinction.
Okay, so let's say we pass that test. I'm having a good cup of coffee. I didn't steal it. I'm grateful for it. But the world is still burning outside my window. How do I hold those two realities at the same time? The source calls this soft-hearted happiness.
Soft-hearted is such a beautiful term for this, isn't it? It implies a lack of rigidity, a certain permeability. It means allowing yourself to feel joy while intentionally keeping the walls of your heart porous enough to let in the reality of others' pain.
So it's the exact opposite of that fortress we talked about with the denial approach.
The exact opposite. It's about balance. It's about not turning away when you see suffering. You let that reality in, you acknowledge it, but you also do not collapse entirely under the weight of it. You find a way to hold the joy and the sorrow in the same space at the same time.
Which sounds incredibly hard. I mean, honestly, that sounds exhausting. How do you even do that?
It is hard. It is absolutely a practice. It requires a lot of emotional agility. But the source argues that, counterintuitively, this kind of integrated happiness is actually motivating.
Motivating happiness. I like the sound of that. How does that work? Because usually we think pain is the only motivator. I'm angry about this injustice, so I'm going to act.
Pain and anger are powerful motivators for reaction, for sure. They get you out the door. But joy, a different kind of joy, motivates vision. It gives you a direction to run in.
Okay, untack that.
Think about it. If you are in a state of constant, unrelenting misery, what are you actually fighting for? You're just fighting against pain. You're trying to get away from the bad thing. But if you allow yourself to taste joy, to really feel the deep love of a partner, or the beauty of a forest, or the thrill of creating something, you are reminded of what a human life should be, what it can be.
You're tasting the goal. You're reminding yourself of the destination you're fighting to get everyone to.
Exactly. You are tasting what is worth fighting for. That joy fuels your desire to protect and extend those possibilities to other people. You want the refugee to be safe, not just because their suffering is bad, but because, in your own bones, how good and precious safety feels.
You want the hungry to be fed because you know the simple, profound joy of a good meal with people you love.
Yes, and that reframes happiness completely. It's no longer an escape from a harsh reality. It becomes the fuel you need for changing that reality.
Which is a perfect transition because this brings us to a really critical section of the deep dive, the strategic necessity of joy.
Yes, this part is so important.
Yeah, this part really struck me. We so often think of joy as a luxury. Like it's the dessert you get to have at the end of the meal. Once we fix the world, then we can all have a party. But for the people who are actually in the trenches, the activists, the aid workers, the people living under oppression, joy isn't a luxury at all. It's a survival tool.
It is absolutely essential. The source makes a profound point here. For many, joy is a form of survival. Without access to laughter, to rest, to beauty, to small celebrations, the human spirit simply breaks. Even the most committed revolutionary will burn out, become bitter, or lose all hope if they do not have sources of replenishment.
You can't run a car on an empty tank forever. Eventually, the engine just seizes up.
And it goes even deeper than just refueling. Joy is also described as a powerful form of resistance.
Joy as resistance. Okay, so we hear that phrase a lot these days, maybe a little too much on social media. Let's give it some real teeth. What does that actually practically mean?
Well, think about the ultimate goal of any system of injustice or oppression. Whether it's a brutal totalitarian regime or just the grinding, soul-crushing nature of extreme poverty, the goal is often to dehumanize, to crush the spirit.
To make life entirely about struggle and survival.
Yes, to take everything away, to reduce a human being to just a biological machine that works and suffers and complies.
And that includes taking away their joy.
Especially their joy. So if you, in the face of that, refuse to surrender your joy, if you still find a way to sing, to dance, to love, to laugh, you are actively defying that system. You're refusing to let injustice have total control over the emotional landscape of your life.
That is powerful. So being happy, genuinely, defiantly happy in the face of it all, can be a radical way of saying, you haven't won. You have not broken me.
And conversely, the expert in the text points out something fascinating. He says that if we on the outside forbid happiness, if we adopt that puritanical view and say, no, we can smile until the world is perfect, we are inadvertently handing injustice a double win.
A double win. How so?
We'll look at the scoreboard from injustice's point of view. Win number one. The injustice harms its primary victims directly. It causes poverty, war, displacement, pain. That's the obvious win.
Okay.
Win number two. It steals the joy, the hope, and the energy from everyone else who isn't even directly affected. It successfully spreads a blanket of grayness and despair over the entire world.
So by making ourselves miserable out of solidarity, we're actually helping the darkness spread. We are, in a weird way, collaborating with the bleakness.
In a way, yes, we are helping to maximize the total amount of suffering in the global system, which is exactly what oppressive systems want.
Wow. Okay. That is a massive paradigm shift for me. So we've moved from happiness is suspicious all the way to happiness is necessary and can even be rebellious.
Yeah,
But, and I have to bring us back down to the ground here for a second. We still have that nagging question of responsibility
of course.
because we don't want to slide back into that hedonistic denial. We can't let joy as resistance just become an excuse to, buy expensive stuff and ignore the suffering of the poor.
Correct. We must never mistake joy as resistance for a license for I can just do whatever I want. The crucial shift, as the source outlines it, is moving from a mindset of guilt to a mindset of responsibility.
Okay, what's the practical difference there? Because they feel pretty similar in my stomach sometimes, that heavy feeling.
They can feel similar, but they lead to very different places. Guilt is static. It asks, should I feel bad for being happy? That is a paralyzing, inward-looking question. It's all about your feelings, your moral purity. It can be quite self-obsessed, actually.
Right. It's me just sitting here obsessing over my own morality. Am I a good person? Am I a bad person?
Exactly. Responsibility, on the other hand, is dynamic and outward-looking. It accepts the reality of your good fortune and immediately asks, what responsibility comes with the good things I have? It's an empowering question. It assumes you have agency and the power to act.
So instead of just feeling bad about my warm house on a cold night, I should be asking, what?
You ask practical questions. Given my relative safety and resources, what can I do to reduce injustice for others? How can I live my life so that my comfort is not bought at the cost of others' suffering?
It's about allocation then, right? Allocating my resources.
Yes, it becomes a question of what share of my time, my money, or my energy can I reasonably devote to helping others, while also critically caring for my own mental health and well-being.
I really like the word reasonably in there, because again, the goal isn't to become a martyr. We're not trying to empty our bank accounts and live on the street because we've already established that just makes you miserable and useless.
No, we are trying to be sustainable and effective. The expert puts it this way. Happiness shouldn't put you to sleep. It shouldn't make you complacent. It should wake you up. It should give you the energy and the clear-headedness to act wisely.
With privilege comes responsibility, not a mandate for misery.
That is the thesis of the entire deep dive in one sentence.
Okay, so let's try to synthesize all of this. We've covered a lot of ground. We need, a formula for the fridge door, a practical summary. The source gives us a way to evaluate specific scenarios.
Let's run through that synthesis. First, what constitutes acceptable happiness? The source says, feeling happy about a sunrise, the joy of time with loved ones, dancing to music, creating something, resting when you're tired. These are the fuels of a good life.
And unacceptable happiness.
Using your joy as a shield to avoid seeing truth. Actively refusing your responsibility, building your happiness directly on the exploitation of others, or worst of all, mocking those who suffer.
And the formula the source offers is really simple but also really effective. The bad math is happiness minus compassion minus responsibility equals
A morally shallow, disconnected life.
And the good math is happiness plus compassion plus responsibility equals
Strength for the struggle.
That's the key, strength for the struggle. You aren't just getting happy for your own sake. You're getting happy so you can be strong enough for the world.
And that, I think, brings us to the ultimate takeaway of this whole deep dive. You do not have to choose between being a good person and being a happy person. In fact, the argument is that to be a truly good, effective person in the long run, you need to find a way to be a sustainably happy person.
The goal isn't no joy until justice is achieved. It's joy that coexists with a constant awareness.
It's a three-step process, really, to put it into practice.
Yeah.
A cycle. Step one, Taste the goodness of life. Allow yourself to feel it fully without guilt.
Step 2.
Let that goodness deepen your empathy. Let it remind you that every single human being deserves to feel this safety, this love, this joy.
And step 3.
Let that powerful combination of joy for what's good and sorrow for what's broken move you to act
Right.
responsibly, sustainably.
Taste the goodness, deepen the empathy, move to act.
It sounds so simple when you lay it out like that, but that is the work of a lifetime.
Well, before we wrap up, we always like to leave you, our listener, with something to chew on, a provocative thought or a question to take with you into your next coffee break, your next moment of joy.
And I'd like to pose these directly to you. The next time you feel happy, can you also remember others who suffer? Not to crush your joy. We've learned that's not the goal, but to let it shape your choices.
Is your happiness connected to how you treat other people?
And finally, the big one. What would it look like in your specific real life to live a life that is both genuinely joyful, indeed deeply just?
It's not an either, it's a both hand. Don't let the guilt paralyze you, but please don't let the joy blind you either.
Embrace the joy and accept the responsibility that comes with it.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you next time.
Take care.